This video is a long time coming. I watched Superman opening day, and I promised a response video to Ben Shapiro's review of the movie. I've been a little busy recently with some personal stuff, but hopefully you see this sometime the week after release. I got some more videos planned, some reviews for games and stuff. I've just keep the schedule open for that stuff. Anyways, without further ado, take it away, Ben.
What the people are saying. People are generally liking the movie. They think it's fun. They think it's kind of a kick. David Cornsweet is charming. He has good physical presence. I didn't mind him as Superman at all. Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane was fine. I thought she was great. I thought both of them had good chemistry. I thought all of that was fine.
I think starting your video off with insulting David Cornsweet's name while praising his performance is laughably ironic for someone named Shapiro to do.
And then there is the analysis. So, my overall review of Superman. Superman is super meh. It's meh.
I'll use this to discuss what I think of the movie. I think besides a few problems I have with the movie, which I'll discuss later on when he brings them up, I think it's a solid movie. I'd rate it a 7.5 out of 10 to maybe an 8. I really enjoyed every performance in this movie. The score was great, and I think the movie's plot is pretty well thought out, besides a few kinks. A few.
My overall problem with the movie is that you are taking the most iconic American IP of all time, Superman, which is to be treated with a certain level of respect. That doesn't mean it has to be, grand mythology the way that Zack Snyder wants to do. Like, my standard for Superman is not Man of Steel. My standard for Superman movies is 1978 Richard Donner, the best version of Superman. It just is.
While I like Christopher Reeves as Superman, I think the best version of Superman is the animated series. And I feel like if Ben actually watched any animated Superman outings, maybe he would have enjoyed the movie more.
Overall, here is my problem. James Gunn is the wrong director, writer, creator for this thing.
I saw Chewbacca on the cover of People magazine. I was like, oh my God.
He's just wrong for it. It's Guardians of the Galaxy with Superman in it. And so that means it's all kind of a mess. It's an overstuffed movie in every way. It's visually overstuffed. In terms of plot, the plot holes are big enough to drive a truck through them. There are character problems. And all of it is just kind of wrapped around this gauzy, fast-paced, jokey tone that doesn't mesh with Superman as central part of Americana, to me.
I'm going to respond to all of this. The first thing I would notice right off the bat was that Ben likes using clips that have no bearing on the topic whatsoever to try to poke fun, while simultaneously not showing any clips that would give any foundation to any argument that he's trying to make. Also, Superman feels tonally different than any typical Guardians film, and saying that they feel similar just because they are directed by the same guy is a bad take. I also don't think that this movie is overstuffed. It feels kind of like a comic book brought to life with how it's paced. I'll bring this up later as well, but Superman is a mostly lighthearted character, so saying that it's an issue for Gunn to lean into the comedy of Superman is disingenuous at best.
James Gunn's sensibility is always to be subversive. That is what he does. He does subversive in Guardians of the Galaxy, right? He takes a comic book movie and he turns it into sort of a potty-mouthed sitcom.
Don't drink fountain water, you idiot. That's disgusting.
And he does the same thing with Suicide Squad. He takes that same sensibility, and now he's doing that with Superman.
Superman robots, I thought I told you to keep an eye on him.
We feed the canine, but he is unruly. And he realizes we are not flesh and blood and couldn't, in our heart of hearts, care less whether he lives or dies.
And
I don't see how anything Gunn does in any of these movies is subversive. Guardians isn't subverting anything. It's just taking the characters that the average audience member wouldn't have known about before the MCU and reinterpreting them for said audience. The Suicide Squad is pretty much just a normal Suicide Squad story and making a movie about it. A good example, and a better example, of these characters being subverted is Man of Steel, when your expectations is that since Superman is the moral good guy, he wouldn't kill. And then he proceeds to cause the deaths of thousands and kill Zod. That's of subverting expectations. In a lot of ways, Superman 2025 is just a return to the core ideals of Superman and what makes the Reeves films great.
arrived. 3 years ago, Superman emerged. 3 weeks ago, there was an invasion. And now 3 minutes ago, Superman's ass got kicked.
I'm not messing around. I'm doing important stuff.
He's not very super. He is not the Man of Steel. He is not invulnerable. He gets his ass kicked routinely. He gets locked up in a prison with a character who's making kryptonite out of his hands.
Sorry, what?
He is constantly in victim mode. Like Green Lantern has much more success in this movie. Mr. Terrific has much more success in this movie than Superman.
Okay, so to start off with, why are we expecting Superman to be invulnerable? It's not his powers that make Superman super, it's his ideals, his morality. And that's what this movie is about. That's why Green Lantern helps fight the Baravians in the end. He's inspired by Superman's ideals. Also, the fact that you don't know who Mr. Terrific is proves to me that you just don't read the comics. You simply watch the movies, which kind of leaves you with no basis on the universe itself, because you based your opinion of Superman on Christopher Reeves, which in of itself is an adaptation.
Superman's parents from Krypton, if you're going to go through the mythology, send him to Earth so that he can be a moral guide for people on Earth using his great powers to stop evil from happening to them. In this movie, his parents from Krypton send him there. This is the big revelation of the movie. His parents send him there to dominate the life on Earth as an alien invasion, essentially, and to create a harem of Earth women to have his many babies.
Well, sign me up.
So immediately you're taking the expectation of what you know about his Krypton parents and flipping it on it.
While I agree that this plot twist is not very good, it leads to one of my favorite parts of the movie, which is the emphasis on Mom and Pa Kent being his moral base. And I think that's great writing. I just think that the twist itself isn't really done or explained very well, especially since Supergirl is still old enough to remember Krypton, so why isn't she evil too?
His parents, Ma and Pa Kent, in the original, they are noble and they are wise. They're kind of salt of the earth. Here, they're basically kind of, I don't know, like down home types who don't seem to, they live in a kind of a crappy house. They're the kind of people who call the TV the box. They're the kind of folks who are sitting around and you know, kind of scratching their butts. They're purposely cast as ugly and non-noble. It doesn't mean everything they say is bad. It isn't, but, and by the way, both of them are alive in this, right? The original Superman mythos is that Pa Kent dies, and that's what sends Superman on his journey. Anyway, Crypto.
Why aren't they salt of the earth here? They fulfill the same role, if not more, than the other adaptations of Ma and Pa Kent, and calling them ugly is just weird. Are you saying you're supposed to find Ma and Pa Kent attractive? Also, they don't even die in all versions of Superman's comic origin, let alone adaptations in media.
The super dog is a terrible dog, is a dog that does not, like an idiot dog. Like way worse than my dog Happy. My dog Happy, way better than this dog, and my dog makes trouble. This dog is a mess. Supergirl, who you get introduced to for a hot second at the very end, Supergirl is a drunken teenage brat. Right, like anything that you think you know about the Superman universe, James Gunn is determined to debunk in the first half hour of the film. I think that it's a betrayal of the original IP and mildly upsetting. Not like hugely upsetting, but mildly upsetting.
Crypto being a bad dog is barely an issue. It's kind of out of character, but not really. It's simply a dog that can fly, so I don't see any reason to be upset at his inclusion. Also, while I think I wasn't impressed by the little we saw of Supergirl at the end of the movie, I think where Gunn is going is good and well adapted from the source, where she starts off as a more traumatized person, since she's older than Clark and remembers Krypton. I think having her be a gender-swapped Clark is boring, personally, so I'm glad they're going in a different direction.
Upsetting. That is my critique of James Gunn. He is not the right person for this film because James Gunn is not capable of delving. He's just not. He's not capable of delving into a single character and examining his motivations and what's interesting about that character. He can't do it with Superman. He can't do it with Lois. He can't do it with Lex. Instead, he decides he's just going to toss everything into the stew. And so you end up with this sort of ADHD film where a bunch of things are going on at the same time, but you never get a good, interesting perspective on anybody who's in the film.
Are comics not ADHD? I don't get it. Comics do the same shit, where they'll add random bits to tie the comic into other comics. And saying James Gunn can't delve into the character's motivations when we have an in-depth look at Lex Luthor in the same movie, as well as the whole Jor-El plot twist existing to recontextualize Superman's motivations in the movie, is dumb as hell.
So Green Lantern is there, and he's kind of just a schmuck, and he's there as comic relief. And then you have Mr. Terrific, who's the actual hero of the film, who you learn nothing about other than he's just kind of a noble do-gooder fellow. And you have all these superheroes who are wandering around. You never get any information about them that makes them interesting or sympathetic or even particularly cool.
Yeah, I'd like more stuff about the Justice Gang personally, but that's just the beauty of a cinematic universe, isn't it? And don't act like you aren't the kind of person who'd bitch if they did it in this movie, saying that the pacing is terrible and it wasn't needed.
But you don't know the motivations of any of the villains, except for Lex, who it turns out is just really kind of jealous of Superman because Superman has superpowers, and Lex is like, I'm really smart, and Superman is really strong, so why do people like Superman more than they like me? Which is a pretty boring motivation, to be frank.
You just don't like Lex Luthor, I guess.
There's a scene where Clark and Lois, they've had a fight, and now they're back together, and they're having a talk. And it's supposed to be this very intimate talk where they're speaking with each other. And literally outside the window, Green Lantern and Mr. Terrific and Hawkgirl are fighting a gigantic sort of eye monster that looks like it's from Suicide Squad.
Stop it right there, Joker. You'll never get me, Batman! Will you catch him?
It's extremely distracting because he's James Gunn and everything has to be some sort of dumb joke. You're like, well, shouldn't Superman be doing something about it? No, let them handle it. Again, that's irritating.
The implication in the movie is that the Justice Gang is more than capable of handling it. And I think the fight in the background adds the feeling of the world and its troubles never stopping, even for Superman.
As far as the plot itself makes very little sense. The plot is basically that Lex Luthor has decided that he is going to make a deal with a foreign politician who the left wants to believe is both Vladimir Putin and Benjamin Netanyahu, but actually is just kind of nothing, is going to invade another country. And Superman stops that invasion. Apparently, Lex wants to use this as an excuse to box up Superman, saying that he's running counter to American foreign policy. Now, we've seen that iteration in other movies, right? That was in Batman versus Superman. You've seen it in other versions of the Superman story, but it's not really taken kind of to its ultimate extreme politically. In any case, it turns out that what he really wants is to annex half of this separate country. He's going to split it with this other dictator. One major plot hole. Lex Luthor is obviously the smartest person in the film. So smart, he can create his own universes. This is a major plot point. And he is concerned about a relatively small piece of land occupied by third worlders. This is his big plan. And later it turns out that he said, oh, no, I started that war just so that I could get people to turn against Superman. Okay, well, he does that halfway through the film. And then he jails him, and then he leaves him alive and explains this secondary plan that apparently was his primary plan, sort of. But he doesn't kill Superman at the time for a reason that remains undisclosed.
We hear that he killed 27 children, and you're always going to make mistakes. But that's.
First off, third worlders, Ben? Really? Second, you have all the puzzle pieces, but you can't seem to put them in order. Lex's plan is to convince the world that he plans to build a utopia in his half of the country. But the real plan is to convince the government that Superman is a threat to foreign policy, therefore giving Lex the go-ahead to take him out. In the Pocket Prison, Lex literally says that he wants to kill him, but the government won't let him yet. It's all in the movie, Ben. Just watch it.
That's how it is.
The entire plot is a complete mess. If you try to chart it, there's no way to do it because James Gunn doesn't care about plot. James Gunn doesn't care about characters. James Gunn cares about jokes and aesthetics. That's what James Gunn cares about.
Nobody cares anymore.
It's very difficult to make Clark a hero in a situation in which the plot is a complete mess. And again, that's not a rip on Nicholas Hoult, who I love in everything. I think he's great. Or David Corenswet or Rachel Brosnahan. That's a rip on James Gunn as a script writer. It's just not a good script.
I think the implications that Superman isn't a hero in this movie because the script is quote-unquote a mess is dumb. Because all you need to show to implicate someone as a hero is someone doing a heroic action. For example, Homelander in The Boys is first shown as a hero when he saves all those people in the beginning. That's what makes his heel turn later even more effective. Just because he ends up a villain doesn't mean that he wasn't implicated as a hero when we first saw him.
Okay, the visuals are, when I say a mess, I mean that the visuals are CGI vomit, like complete CGI vomit. So James Gunn has an addiction to kind of gross and weird imagery, which doesn't really fit in the context of the, again, Americana that is Superman. And so there's some really gross and weird images, particularly in the Pocket universe, where you have characters who are turning themselves into weird tentacly octopuses, and you have people's eyes being attacked on a wide variety of it. He has an obsession with eyes, James Gunn, and you can see it in Suicide Squad. He has like an obsession with the eyeball being pierced, and it's very strange and off-putting. My wife was very off-put by a lot of this imagery. It feels like psychedelic LSD CGI vomit, is what it feels like for large portions of the film.
While I do think the CGI is a bit spotty at times, I don't think that it's very out of place for all these quirky, gross out events to happen. It's stuff that you'd see in the comics for sure. So I fail to see your point, really.
You never really get a kinetic scene of Superman doing something cool. You have multiple scenes of giant heavy objects falling on Superman and Superman stopping the giant heavy objects from falling to save an individual. Again, another plot hole. You'll have giant building. The entire building will fall, and he will stop the building from falling to save one person or a chipmunk who is in the way. But it's an entire building full of people, so presumably all those people are dead. In any case, the visuals, I think, are a problem.
This is annoying. You say that there's no scenes of Superman doing anything cool, yet proceed to give an example of Superman doing something cool. You then say that there's people in the building that we've literally been shown to have been evacuated? This is literally just you nitpicking at this point, Ben. Get to the point.
The music, again, I'm John Williams is still alive. Just hire him to do your Superman movie, you stupid. Just stop it.
Get some help.
I think the score is very good. Yeah, I'd like to see John Williams score another Superman movie, but I'm happy with the product we got.
Okay, then we get to the actual politics. So I know this is what people are waiting for. They're waiting for my political rip on this film. So we've been told this is a movie about illegal immigration.
I'm going to skip this section because if you think Superman being an immigrant is too political, then you aren't worth my time.
The sort of social media politics that social media is stupid and rigged by bots, which, I mean, I think everybody sort of agrees on at this point, and there's a really dumb visual joke where Alexis set up actual monkeys typing into computers as his bots. It's like, oh, God. But that's so James Gunn. Again, it's all so... I just don't like James Gunn.
That's in the comics.
Other politics of the situation are supposedly this foreign policy thing. So the left is suggesting that the foreign policy conflict in which Superman engages is a stand-in for Israel and the Palestinians, or alternatively for Russia and Ukraine. So let me give you the geopolitical setup. The geopolitical setup here is that there is a country called Boravia, and this country called Boravia is run by essentially a corrupt dictator who's working with Lex Luthor, and it invades another sovereign country, Jarhanpur, okay? And so Superman stops that at the very beginning. Okay, and doesn't show him stopping it. He talks to Lois Lane about it. Fine. Okay, the idea is geopolitically that Boravia has been a longtime ally of the United States. Jarhanpur is a country where we don't know who it's allied with. And it may or may not be run by jihadis, but we don't know. Like, we don't know who it's run by. It doesn't matter. The only reason that Clark stops it, that Superman stops it, is he says because
People were going to die.
which, as we'll get to in sort of my final breakdown of why this movie doesn't work and why no really good Superman movie has been made since 78.
What did he say?
I'll explain in a moment. The people of Jarhanpur are brown.
Look at my African American over here.
The people of Boravia are white. Okay, so this is why the left is reading this as Israel, the Palestinians. The reason it doesn't work that way is because we are not made aware that the people of Jarhanpur are either wildly terrorism supportive, that they have participated in multiple terrorist attacks on the people of Boravia. They are led by a corrupt dictatorship that murders gay people, right? None of that's in the movie. So it doesn't match up that way. And the idea that Boravia is Israel in this iteration, like a longtime U.S. ally that's randomly invading countries for territorial gain, that does not match up to any of the facts on the ground that we know of at all. That is not real. So,
1. Boravia has existed in comics longer than Israel has existed in real life. 2. If a comically evil country is being compared to your country, then your country has done some pretty comically evil things. 3. I think it's racist and Islamophobic to imply that since they are brown, that they must be controlled by jihadis or terrorists. You forget that Israel exists in the third world, and the only reason why they're so advanced is because our taxpayer dollars all go to them instead of our healthcare.
So this brings me to my final point about this movie and all other Superman movies. The fundamental flaw in all Superman movies of my lifetime is the thing that Hollywood cannot say and will not do.
Politics, does he still stand for truth, justice, all that stuff?
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
This is not just a throwaway line. It is deeply important to the character of Superman. Why? Well, because
I'm going to cut Ben off here because he rambles on about how America deserves more power, blah, blah, blah. But don't actions speak louder than words? If Spider-Man goes an entire movie or entire game or an entire comic acting like Spider-Man and supporting the core narrative of with great power comes great responsibility, is it then a bad adaptation just because someone doesn't specifically say that line? I think Superman embodies the core idea of truth, justice, and the American way without saying it. And I think it reflects more of America as an ideal, not a country, which I think Ben wants Superman to be. Superman doesn't reflect a country because, let's face it, the country does not reflect those ideals. Current America does not reflect what Superman is. Only the promises in the Constitution and on the Statue of Independence is what's left of the justice and freedoms that Superman stands for. That's what allows people like Lex to thrive. No, Superman doesn't represent reality. He represents hope for a better reality based on the promises and ideals of our founding fathers. And that's what Ben just doesn't understand. Ben wants Superman to represent his idea of America, the conservative idea of America, the Republican idea of America. And that's just not what he is. That's never what he's going to be. And with that, I think it's the end. I'm going to be hard at work on other videos for you guys. And I'm going to maybe stream some more, hopefully, in the future. So stay tuned for that. Stay safe, y'all.